Hey, everybody, welcome to House 6, our movie podcast about movies. So, we are in the 1940s with our Oscar watch for Best Picture. We're at 1942, and we are going to talk about Miss Miniver. So, before we get into that, we always like to do our little 3-word review of the actual movie. So, Michael, you volunteered to go first, so I'll let you go first.
Yeah, I thought this one was pretty obvious. It's just drive, fool. That's all you need. Problem solved.
Jared, what was yours?
Or Choir Boy.
That was kind of sad, yeah.
Didn't even know his
Thomas?
name. B for victory.
B for victory. Mine would be Miss Miniver, please. So. Okay, so we are going to talk about the awards first. The 15th Academy Awards were held March 4th, 1943, in the Coconut Grove of the Ambassador Hotel in Los Angeles. The awards were hosted by Bob Hope and partially broadcasted on CBS Radio. This would be the last ceremony with a banquet and the last one to be held in a hotel. So due to World War II, the Oscar statuette was made of plaster and not gold-plated this time. So kind of sad, but war rations. Mrs. Miniver led the night with 12 nominations and 6 wins and was the second film to be nominated for all 4 acting awards. Other films nominated for Best Picture included The Pride of the Yankees, 49th Parallel, and The Magnificent Ambersons, directed by Orson Welles. James Cagney won Best Actor for Yankee Doodle Dandy, and Van Heflin and Teresa Wright won Best Supporting Roles. Greer Garson, who won the Best Actress, gave a 6-minute acceptance speech, which is the longest in Oscar history, which is weird because they always seem to take forever, but I guess that's just me being bored. There was a 4-way tie for Best Documentary. They were all war movies, of course.
Sorry. It could be worse. It could be a Game Awards speech.
Oh, I know.
From Christopher, what's his face? Poor guy.
The Fuhrer's Face, the Disney-produced propaganda cartoon, won for Best Animated Short. And finally, White Christmas from Irving Berlin won Best Original Song for Holiday Inn. So, Christmas classic for you. We get into the movie, 1942, Mrs. Miniver from MGM, based on the character created by Jan Struther, who published her stories in a series of newspaper columns before they were collected in a book in 1940. It stars Greer Garson, who won the Best Actress Award and would be nominated 7 times for Best Actress and 5 times in consecutive years. Walter Pidgeon would get his first of 2 nominations for Best Actor in this movie. The film was directed by German-born William Wyler, whose 12 nominations is the most by any director, and is tied with Spielberg for directing 13 Best Picture nominees.
Okay.
He's the only director in history to direct 3 Best Picture winning films. And we will see another of his works really, really soon. The script was revised up to the day of shooting that famous sermon to reflect the quickly evolving views of the war by Americans. President Roosevelt ordered the film to be rushed into theaters, and the sermon was used in leaflets dropped over enemy and occupied territories. The film was a huge success, becoming the highest-grossing movie of 1942, won praise from critics and war figures like Joseph Goebbels and Winston Churchill. A sequel happened in 1950 with the leads returning. So, the leads. So, Greer Garson, the movie's named after her, but the reason I put Mrs. Miniver, please, was because I don't think she had like as big as role in a role as I was expecting she was going to have for a movie named after. And then they named the rose after her.
I have thoughts about that. Why? Okay, but we'll wait.
Okay. And what do you guys think of her acting, though? I think she was fine. I just wanted to see more of her.
actually really thought mostly everyone's acting, especially like the chemistry between the actors was really good in this movie. But yeah, I thought she did a great job. Especially the scene that we'll get to where there's a confrontation with her alone in the kitchen. I thought she did a great job kind of playing that scene tensely, and
Yeah, that was the best scene in the movie,
it
in
was
my
really good.
opinion.
So, yeah, but
Uh,
definitely liked it.
any other thoughts on the leading actress?
Yeah, no, she was very good. I don't know if she's British or not though, but
She's British American.
okay, that makes sense. I was just like, because her accent seemed to go in and out sometimes. So I was just like, same with the father, the husband.
He's
Like,
Canadian.
Yeah, that makes
Pigeon.
that makes
Canadian.
sense. So, but also, the dad is one of my favorite characters in this. But my favorite character was probably Toby. So, just saying,
Good old Toby.
the youngest son.
He's the boy.
Oh, yeah. That's your favorite character?
I'm
Well,
kidding.
I was like, I want to smack that boy upside the head. He's
I'm
driving me
really-
crazy.
I'm kidding. I mean, I like
He
him.
wasn't
but
that
he's not
bad. He
my
wasn't
favorite.
that bad, but there were times where I'm
He's
like, all right, kid, you got to
hilarious,
stop screaming.
So Walter Pigeon we saw last time. He was in How Green Was My Valley, and he's back. And what'd you guys think of him this time?
That's a husband.
It's a man.
Yeah.
That's a man's man right there.
It's a man's man right there. No, he's great. I liked his it had a lot of good charm in it. Like whenever he's like, it's always breakfast whenever I wake up. I'm hungry. Like he's joking about.
Yeah.
It's always time to eat breakfast.
Well, no, one of my favorite parts was when he slaps Miniver like right on the rear.
Oh,
I know. I almost put that in my 3-word description.
Like, what do you mean? Like you took the gun away from him. He's just like,
That got me going, Mrs.
I know.
Miniver.
funny.
well, no, what was great was when the maid walked in. She's like,
Oh, yeah.
No, come in.
Occupado. He's kind of the classic like 40s, 50s dad when you think of Hollywood
Yeah.
movies. Yeah.
that dude always had a pipe going. So
He had the upside down pipe at one. Jared, what was your favorite character in this movie? The old lady?
Probably the dad.
Oh, what old lady? Oh, the mom of the younger, whatever the heck.
yeah,
The snooty
Girl.
lady.
Carol's mom, the snooty lady. All right, shall we get into the plot? So
sure.
we get the MGM lion, which I know Jared is very afraid of. So it tells us it's happening in 1939. Gives us everything about like happy, easy England, how happy it was back then, but things were about to change. And we get a scene of city hustle with cars, and she's walking through the town, and everyone's bustling and stuff like that. And she's about to get on the bus, and he's like, "Hey, let me get on the bus." She gets on, but then she's like, "I don't want to get on the bus. I got to get off the bus." And she's like, "I want to go in the opposite direction." And the guy's like, "That's the only way we don't go on these buses." And then, okay, she goes back to buy a hat that she had seen. And the salesperson's like, "We knew you'd be back because you love to spend money." And she buys this weird hat with this weird thing that hangs down, and she's very stylish. And then she gets back on a bus, and there's a priest there, and they play "What's in the Box?" So she's like, "What's in that box?"
Oh, yeah.
And he's got cigars in there. And then the older lady that we talked about joins them, and she's just been back from shopping, and she's complaining about those darn middle class females, man. No respect.
I did like that. It's like, oh, the hustle and bustle as middle class females. Like, oh, well, I guess that's me.
Yep.
Sorry.
And she's like, "Oh yeah, I know you. I know your name. It's Miniver or something. What does your husband do?" And he's an architect. And she says that these middle class females are all mink coats and no manners. And then so they're on the train. She gets back to wherever her town is, and we get Clarence, if you remember It's a Wonderful Life. So he's here. And he wants to show her something special. That was kind of creepy.
Yeah, I was like, in today's movie
Come this
language, that
way.
is run.
Come this way. I have something to show you.
So what he shows her is his rose masterpiece. So he's created a rose. And he wants to name the rose, and he wants to get her permission to name it after her because she's just the lady. She is the best. So he's going to name it after her. So she goes home, and we see the husband. We're introduced to the husband. He looks like he's kind of like hiding in a car, but he's actually going to buy this car. He's inspecting it. He's like, he tries to haggle. Like, this is a little out of our range. And the guy's like, oh, fine. We got cheaper cars. We got cheaper cars over there, and he's like, "Nah, I like that car."
He's like, "No, I want this one,"
and he takes it. But he doesn't want to tell the wife yet because it's a lot of money. So he goes in and he says hello to the kids, and the girl's like, "Come watch me play piano, Dad." He's like, "Heck no, I'm late for something else." So he goes up, and he's got no time for piano. The son. Is it the son or the daughter? I don't remember.
It's
the son has the cat, right?
Yeah.
And he's like, Napoleon wants to throw up. That's what I heard. I wasn't sure if that's what he actually said, but he says Napoleon wants to throw up, so I got to take the cat to go throw up.
Responsible kid.
And they're talking about going through phases at dinner, right? And he's like, am I going through a phase? And they're like, yeah, you're going through a phase.
He's like,
yeah, man. Okay, so they get to talking, and they're talking about spending money. And he's like, you know what? My car is kind of crappy. Probably need a new car or something like that. And she's like, yeah, go buy a new tire. He's like, okay, I'll buy a new tire. And he's like, what is money? I forget what they're talking about. And she finally admits that she bought a new hat. He's like, a hat? And she's like, how do I look with this hat on? He's like, you look ridiculous.
He's like, you look good, but the hat, not so much.
And then, so they have
like when they're going to bed right there, and he's like, hey, you left the light on. And she's like,
oh, yeah. So, they're feeling good about themselves. They got a new hat, a new car. And she's like, we're pretty lucky people. And this being the 40s, they do sleep in separate beds. So I don't know how the kids get made, but
when they put the beds together.
That's a lot of work, man.
And there's that huge gap. Like
an activity of jumping in between. They were just more athletic back then, that's all.
Maybe they do it in the shower or something.
Whoa.
So there he is. So they have an older son who's like way older than the younger
he
kid,
came in. I was like, what happened? What's the story between her and him? It's like 15 years between the two.
So I thought his name was Ben at first, but his name's Vin.
Ben.
Yeah.
I thought it was Finn.
Vin.
Vincent.
Vin.
Oh. Man, I'm sad. I think Finn fits him better.
So they ruined the whole movie for Michael.
I'm done.
They're like, where's your mustache, Vin? He's like, I got rid of it. I learned things in college. College taught me that I don't really know nothing, man. And the dad's like, oh, money well spent.
That was a good line.
He took his first philosophy class, and he thought he was on top of the world, and then this girl comes and just shuts him down.
So he got a social conscience, he says. So, and these days we just say he went woke. He went to college. So they have breakfast, and the girl Carol comes, and she's like, "I got a request."
That old guy? Tell him to get rid of that
Crush
rose.
his dreams. Really rub his nose in the dirt.
my grandma likes this, so you gotta get rid of that rose.
Here's a can of gasoline. Just go burn down that shed real fast if you don't mind.
Just shatter all his dreams, please. Persuade him to withdraw. She gets very elitist. The son's like, man, these people, he's not having it. But she's like, hey, what have you done, college boy? You talk a good game, but do you actually do anything? And I go help. What does she do? She does some kind of charity.
Some volunteering, yeah.
Once a week or once a year, she goes for a week to do something.
Something aristocratic.
So the rose kind of becomes the talk of the town. Everyone's gossiping, and they're like, oh, that old man should just withdraw. And they're like, nah. They go to a dance, and Carol's dancing with some boys, and the parents like her. They think she's hot and
Witty.
she should get with their son. But
They like that she told their son off. She's
put him in his place.
Yeah,
he should have kept the mustache.
What a real piece of.
He needed that direction in his life. The son doesn't show up to the dance, but he sends a note saying that he wants to see her.
Dude, what a cringy dude on this scene.
Kind of creepy.
He sends a note, and then he's like posing on the dock.
He's just like,
"Oh, you're here."
And he tells her, remember we were kids together? Remember you had fat legs back then?
I know. I was like, who on earth allows... I mean, she should have slapped him and walked away immediately.
Remember when you were thick? Not anymore.
Well, he's just it's like sausages.
And she finds that adorable, I guess. I guess I've been doing it all wrong.
Being a gentleman is not the way.
And then he's like, yeah, dude, we should get together. And she's like, no, tomorrow I'm leaving for Scotland. So then we get a scene in a church where they stand for the anthem. And so time has passed. And I forget how much. Do you guys remember? It was like 2 months or something like that.
Well, it was a few months because she said that I'd be back in like September.
Oh, yeah.
But she gets back early. Yeah. She does get back early. And he sees her in the church, and they're flirting, even though they're supposed to be worshiping. This
is a house of God.
I know. And then they get the news in the church. So they're about to hear the sermon, and someone walks in, and they're at war. So he's like, your church is canceled. Maybe we shouldn't pray about it. Let's just go home because you got things to do.
And the son's like, I don't care about war. I got to get a date in.
Yeah. So they go home to lunch where they're having lunch, and the maid's husband, he's going to war, so they say goodbye to Horace. Bye, Horace.
You want a sherry? Sure, I'll take a sherry. Here you go. I gave it to his wife. And she downs it. He's like, pour another one for yourself. How about that?
Yeah, and okay, I'm trying to figure out what my notes say here. So they say Vin's been writing her, and she says, yeah, you've been giving me sweet letters. I know that name. I can't remember what I'm thinking here. And there are sirens. Okay, they hear sirens, right?
Mm-hmm.
For the air raid stuff.
Well, they hear the air raid siren. They go down to the cellar, and then
it's kind of a drill.
Yeah, the shopkeeper is now the air raid warden. He's like, "Oh yeah, you got a crack in your window here." And they cover it up. He's like, "That's normally like a fine, but whatever." And he's like, "Also, I have a special on Italian sardines." Yeah.
Yeah, and then they go to a bar, right? And like the guys are all talking, and they're listening to the radio, and the guy on the radio is like, "Yeah, we got a friend in Germany giving us all the info." So 8 months pass, and Vin is now a pilot officer because he's been, they got the advanced track for him, so the fast track, so they can get him up in a plane. They have dinner, right? Which way to Tron? I don't know what that means. My notes got really weird. Has Vin going? So they're having dinner, and Carol's there, and Vin's there, and the little Toby guy's
Toby.
Freaking Toby's like, hey, you gonna marry that girl or something? No, you're a coward, man. He's a coward. And they start talking about it. And he's like, fine, I will marry her. Well, she kind of takes the lead, right? Because she's like, well, if you ask me to marry you, I will.
And he's like, screw you, Toby. Watch this. Marry me, woman.
He's like, I was going to wait for the right time. It was going to be romantic. Screw it. We're getting married now. We'll do it live.
So, yeah, they get married. He reports for duty. He's in a plane. He buzzes the house. And they're like, hey, that was his plane. The dad wakes up at night and he gets a call, and there's like some emergency that they need his riverboat. So they go and they get all these boats, right? And the boats are like traveling down the river, and then there's like a cruiser or something. It's like a screaming, but this boat was screaming. It was weird. It was like, and it tells them, "Hey guys, we got a problem. All our troops are like stuck in Dunkirk. So the destination for you guys is Dunkirk." So the dad's like, "Yeah." So they asked like everyone, and like, did anyone want to turn back now? But no one turns back. They all go. So she wakes up in the Mrs. Miniver wakes up in the morning. 5 days have gone by, and she hasn't heard anything from her husband or son. And she finds a German soldier sleeping in the bushes, and his gun is laying next to him. She goes for the gun, but is really slow about it. So he wakes up and he takes the gun, and he kind of ushers her into the house, and he starts demanding food and milk and stuff like that. And she does it because she's afraid because the kids are upstairs, dad's gone. He's injured, right? And she's like, I forget what she says. She because she wants him to like give himself up. It'd be easier on him. And they kind of get in an argument. He's like, "We're gonna bomb you guys the heck, We're gonna bomb you." And but he's gonna leave. He asks for a jacket so he can kind of hide himself. But he doesn't get out the door. He passes out because he's injured. So she takes the gun, hides that. She calls the cops and a doctor, and they come and they take him away. And
like when he's eating the bread and the milk, he's like, "You got any meat?"
meat.
I thought he's gonna put the meat in the bread, but he just like
no, he just wanted meat, straight meat. So she's kind of shook up about that, as you would imagine. And the doctor's like, "Are you okay?" But just then, Dad gets back. He is back on his boat, and she's like, "Yay!" And like we were already talking about, he's like, "I could sleep for a week, man," and he like goes immediately to bed. And they hear that Vin has returned too, and then we get that scene that Thomas was talking about, where they're talking about. He's like, "Yeah, I was in Dunkirk. It was real exciting. You can't imagine because nothing exciting happens here in your little world." And then she's like, the maid comes in and she's like, "We don't have any like eggs or stuff because
ham.
What ham?
Ham.
Oh, we don't have ham because the guy wanted breakfast, right? So he wanted some ham." And he's like, "Oh, we don't have it because that German guy." And he's like, "What German guy?" It's like, "What's been going on here?" And she's like, "It was nothing. This German guy was here and he had a gun." And he's like, "What'd you do?" And he's like, "I took the gun away from him."
Jared, it wasn't like this. It was, whoa.
Yeah. So he gives her a little
he got
spank,
he got like a handful.
and you could hear it. And
I think I know he was tired, but if it was me and I was gone doing that for like a week, I needed a week's long sleep, but someone was like, "Hey, you want breakfast?" I think I'd stay up for breakfast. I don't think I could fall asleep. I'd be like, "Breakfast."
and they have bacon. I don't know why he wanted ham first, but so Lady Belden is visiting, and she's like, "I'm more scared about this than the actual German guy." So she goes down there to meet her because Lady Belden doesn't want Vin to marry Carol because the class situation, and she brings up that they're so young, man. But Mrs. Miniver's like, "Dude, don't you guys have a reputation for marrying young? How old were you when you got married?" He's like, "I was 16.
This isn't about me. This is about them.
Yeah. And she's like, "This is war, woman. Let them get married. They don't have a lot of time, or they might not have a lot of time." And she finally kind of agrees to it. And then we get a scene where they're in the shelter and they're hiding out there because there's some airdrops going. And there's like this new ventilation thing that he thinks is awesome. And he's like, "Hey, this thing will turn green if there's gas." And she's like, "Okay." And like, "What happens if there is gas?" And he's like, "You close it." And then she's like, "Well, then what?" And then we suffocate.
And we die.
Yeah. So he kind of laughs at that. The kids are like sleeping, and the dad grabs a book, and it's like Alice in Wonderland. He's like, "This is the first book I ever read." And she's like, "Me too." Um, so the bombs start dropping, and they're getting real close. They can hear it, and it's like shaking the shed, and the kids wake up and they're crying, and everyone's kind of scared, but they make it through it, even though their house gets kind of damaged. We
And then
get
freaking Toby. Oh, they almost killed us today, didn't they?
Oh, yeah. They almost got us this time. We get a scene with the newlyweds. Vin and Carol are back from Scotland. I think they went on a honeymoon, a real short honeymoon, and they're back and they see the house is all kind of destroyed. And there's a flower show. So we get the flower show. It's been leading up to this, right? And they're gonna vote for best rose, and it's Clarence's red rose versus Mrs. Belden's white rose. Her rose is pretty cool, I have to say. So they go and then they tell her who wins for some reason because she's like in charge or something. She's gonna read the ballot anyway. And she happens to win, but Mrs. Miniver is like, be really cool if you didn't win, right? And she's like, "What? I won!"
Whatever, loser. She goes
she,
running
like,
up.
Yeah, she kind of shames her into giving up the award for poor Clarence to help morale. So he wins. He's in shock. The poor guy's in shock. They're like, "You won!" Everyone's like really happy. They kind of cheer more when they find out that she like got second place. It's funny. So that's happened, but the air raids come back and the sirens come back, and they're like, "Well, we got to go. Everyone's invited to my house for a party if you want to do that." But
I
Mrs.
got cellars
Miniver,
on cellars in my place.
I know
Stellar party!
we got sausages and everything, Italian sausage.
You just hear like beats going on in there.
So that sounds good, but Mrs. Miniver and Carol have to drive Vin back to his plane, so they drive onto the base. And while driving back, they hear gunfire, and Mrs. Miniver's like, "It's all right," but Carol is hit.
If I
She
made
can't
this movie,
feel
I'd be
it.
like, "Dang it, Carol, you got hit."
Well, they've been talking this whole time about Vin not making it, and it just so happens that Carol gets hit in the war. She can't feel anything, so she drives back to a house, and she calls for an ambulance, but they say the ambulances are too busy at that moment, and Carol does pass away. Vin gets home, and he tells them that like he already knows that she's died, and he wants to go see her, and he goes up to the room and closes the door, and Mrs. Miniver breaks down crying. And then we get the last scene, which is a sermon, and the minister points out that we've lost some people in the community. We lost the choir boy, the empty seat you see right there. We lost Mr. Belden, who had just won that silver cup for the best rose. And he said, he gives a speech, and he says, "This is the people's war. It's not just the soldiers fighting; it's us too." And then some planes fly by in the shape of a V, and the movie ends. So that was Mrs. Miniver. I already said kind of what I thought. I liked the movie, but I thought it needed more Mrs. Miniver. The best scene for me was the German scene, or the German soldier. So I was expecting kind of more of that stuff, or like Mrs. Miniver had to make hard choices and stuff like that. But it wasn't a bad movie. It wasn't great though. So what did you guys think? Let's start with Thomas.
Okay. So I think Mrs. Miniver isn't really like the character exactly. It's more of kind of like the rose. It's more to be representative of like the English people and how, they have to take care of it and make sure it survives and thrives. And, through all this, it's still victorious. So I think that's kind of what Miss Miniver is supposed to be. Not exactly like the "I am Spartacus." We're all Spartacus. We're all Mrs. Miniver.
If only.
But if only. But no, I really like this movie a lot, actually. I thought the chemistry between all the characters was really good. I got some notes here, actually. Here we go.
Some newts?
Some notes. Dude, okay. The dad, I think, is probably my favorite character in this movie.
You sure it's Toby?
It was a joke.
No, you don't joke about Toby.
Well, Toby got squished in that pier, by the way, when his brother was trying to look over and see Carol.
Yeah.
He like leaned over and like his
He's
face
like
was
punching
like, dude, there's this one part where the dad's bringing Vin home from pilot training, which I think was funny. He's like, I got an 85. He's like, that's all you got for pilot training? Okay. Congrats, I guess. Cool. But there's one part where Carol is there and like they set it up to be like all romantic and stuff. And the dad's walking up, he grabs his son's hat from the banister and like tosses it behind him and like he catches it. I was like, that is smooth as all get out. That is a man right there. That is awesome. Let's see. Yeah, I think Mrs. Miniver is actually an allegory for England. The cinematography in this was actually pretty good. I was kind of surprised, especially when one of the opening shots is Mr. Ballard. Mr. Ballard? What's his name? Clarence. That guy.
Yeah.
So when he's showing Mrs. Miniver the rose, Mrs. Miniver, there's this part where she leans in to smell the rose, and then the camera pans over and you see the mirror. So you see him reacting to her smelling the rose at the same time, and then it pans back, and then it's her and him again. I was like, that's a really, really good shot. Like you don't really think about that in, a drama, but that was really good. Also, has anybody seen the first season of Downton Abbey? Anybody seen that one?
I've seen like 5 episodes.
Okay, there is a there is a garden like subplot in Downton Abbey that I swear to God, Downton Abbey stole from this exact thing. It's a whole thing about like the old matriarch of like a lord's family like always wins the best, in the gardening competition, and it's exactly this. It's weird. But yeah, no, I was really impressed with this. I've never heard of this movie, I'll be honest with you. But this is also you can definitely tell this was made during the during the World War II. Quite a bit of pro English, I guess, propaganda. I don't want to say propaganda, but it is what it is because it's World War II. But I was very impressed with this. I really like this a lot. Here, who wants to go next?
Jared, go.
Okay. Yeah, this wasn't a bad movie. I don't think it was like an Oscar movie. Like nothing really stands out too much in this. Like in all the Oscar movies, there's usually like a scene or something like that will stick with you. This didn't really have that. But there was good scenes. Especially I think everyone said it, like her in the kitchen with the German guy, and he just like goes off. Because at first I thought he was just gonna like go to the hospital, like. It was just her seeing like both sides get casualties and stuff like that. But then he just goes off. He's like, "Man, we're gonna bomb you like crazy." And I was like, "Dang, he really leaned into that." I didn't really care about the whole flower subplot. I liked more of like the war stuff, like with her and the family dealing with that. I hated the old lady at first, but then I really turned that towards the end. She really softened up, and especially that scene where like the son goes and sings with her at the end at the church. I was like, oh, that's kind of sweet of him. But yeah, it's okay. It wasn't a bad movie at all. Just I don't think it was like an Oscar movie. So
Interesting. Michael?
Interesting. I'm more aligned with Thomas on this one, and someone kind of took me by surprise. Thomas, I had never heard of it, and he's heard a lot more of these movies than I have. But it's kind of a slow burn for me. I feel like the first kind of half to 2/3 of it was just kind of like, okay, we're doing things, getting into these characters. I mean, I feel like really they caught me. I enjoyed the characters very, very quickly. Like I said, the chemistry between the two, like. I would have guessed they would have just taken a couple that had been happily ever after off the street and threw them in a movie, because I'm like, you guys just seem like you know each other backwards and forwards.
Mm-hmm.
But and then getting I really did enjoy the tea scene where the two younger kids are like Vin, I guess, and Carol are calling each other out about like, him feeling like he's all, oh, I know everything now because I went to Oxford, and she's like, well, what are you doing about it with all that knowledge you got? But so I enjoyed their kind of like progression with their relationship, and then the tease of, is he going to be the one that dies? Because talk about the grandmother's history and how she got married at 16, but then her husband died. What you say, like a few weeks later, or months later, 3 years later? I can't remember. It was a really short time. He ended up dying in the war, and so it was just kind of like acting like it's going to mirror the storyline as it kept leading you to believe, oh, is Vin, I keep wanting to call him Vin gone, whatever, but no, you'd hear his plane going off again. But then, although the scene with her getting shot, it did catch me by surprise, and it's one of those, like, it's the first like older movie like that we've watched in these Oscar ones. It's actually had me quite like hit emotionally. I'm like, oh wow, I didn't expect that, and I didn't realize I really didn't want that character to die. But it's also really stupid because like you're in a car. One, don't stop under the fight. Like I said, drive the car, fool. Two, why drive to a house, then call an ambulance to drive to you? Drive to the ambulance, drive to the hospital. Like, why are you sitting in the middle of a field? And then he just goes and she's just perfectly laying still on the floor. But that's just nitpicky, silly things. But a very impactful movie, I think, for sure. And then the speech end was excellent. And like Jared said, him going over, I expected him to go over earlier because he kind of looked over at grandma sitting at the bench, whatever, and I was like, he's like, go over there, fool, what are you doing? And finally went over there, and that was a very, very touching moment. But yeah, it's another scene I want to draw attention to was the one where they are in the bunker. It's that kind of like elongated scene of just the bombs getting closer and closer and closer, and they're just in that kind of like, British mentality of keep it together, everything's fine. Like, oh, what did you do today, honey? And they're like trying to keep it calm and everything, and the kids are sleeping and quiet. But then it actually gets active and violent enough where the kids are waking up screaming and crying. I thought that was actually a really impactful scene and really, really well done. So yeah, this movie definitely, it just kind of, it was a payoff at the end. I think it definitely could have some things trimmed in to make it, or trimmed up to keep it more along the lines of a better paced movie. But by the end, I was like, no, it earned itself for me by the end, for sure. I definitely enjoyed it. Very good movie.
What's crazy? All the boats in this was way more like impressive or impactful than Dunkirk, like the most recent movie, because you just see like a crap ton. Like you really get a sense of like how many people are there to.
The amount of noise that all those motors made too, that was kind of interesting because they didn't have music or score or anything else. It was just the sound of the boats gathering. I was like, that would be really, really loud. All those motors going off at the same time. So it's pretty cool. Pretty cool scene.
I forgot to mention whenever we were talking about the house being destroyed, and they're like kind of looking around, like, well, the second story's fine, but the dining room's shot. But then they go and the little kid's playing piano under the second story. And there's a support beam in the back that's crooked over here, and there's like broken walls. I'm like, should she be playing under that? You want to move the piano? But I guess they knew what they were talking. He's an architect. He knows what he was talking about.
True. I like Toby's. There was another line that, he's like, is the war over? And it's like, it just started.
Jacob, what are you talking about?
It's our first day. Yay!
Kid's broken.
Yeah, so it's good.
Also, he had the most well-behaved cat of all time.
True.
It's just grooming itself,
pulling on its tail.
Yeah.
Like
that cat.
Napoleon.
Not like that alien cat. What am I thinking?
Alien cat?
From Alien?
Was it on the newest Alien? Like, was there a cat? There wasn't a cat. So I'm thinking of something else.
I don't know.
I don't know what I'm thinking of. There was a naughty cat on something. I can't remember what it was. Beetlejuice, I think, of a cat?
No.
I'm getting way out of left.
Just stroking out.
So I know I've seen a cat on a movie. I just can't remember what it was. So we are done with this one, unless you guys have anything else to say.
Nope.
We're gonna continue with our war movies next time when we review Casablanca. So you think it was divisive this time? Wait till next
That'd be
time.
interesting.
Can't tell you how happy I am that we're actually reviewing this movie.
It's a great movie.
So. I know it's a beloved movie, but we're gonna probably have some words about it.
On my screen right now, it's me and
It's
Michael, and
literally
then Joseph and Jared. I'm like, no, this is
So we
exactly
just
how
need to
it's
put a
going to
big
be.
verses right in the middle.
You have people who are right and wrong. There you go. So
I know it's hard being right all the time.
I
So we're
know.
gonna finish. We're gonna say goodbye for this time. Please throw some likes and subscribe and notify yourself for even more good stuff to come. And we will see you next time. Bye.